All right. Welcome, everybody. My name's Hung Lu, and we'll get going on today's event. Please give me a hello and, just let us know you're in by typing in the chat or the QA button, and we will get going. All right. Trent, I'll turn everything over to you.
Okay. Thanks, Hong. Thanks everybody for joining us. So we'll get to some introductions in a second. So as you can see on the title slide here, Unlocking Hidden Wealth. So how multiplexes build profits for homeowners and realtors. So we're a team that's professionals across the board in this area, and we'll explain a bit more again as we go on. Um, and I guess kind of a housekeeping thing. If you do have questions, you can type them into the Q&A section, but we will have an opportunity at the end to answer any questions as well. And there may be a poll or two throughout, so just feel free to add where you can, and we'll go from there. So okay, so here's the agenda for today. Don't really have to kind of go through all that. You can see the introductions. We'll talk about the opportunity, a little case study, and then again the Q&A. So, so first off, this is regarding multiplexes and homeowners that have lots that maybe they don't know what to do with these lots. There's a lot of questions out there on all these new rules around multiplexes and the new zonings that are changed that have been changed. So there's questions. So, one of the main things is a lot of these homeowners are like, well, what is it? What is in it for me? So I'm gonna let you guys take a second or two to type in some motivators for any homeowners that are out there in terms of, might be a motivator for you to even look at doing a multiplex on your lot. I'll give you a minute or two if you want to do that again on the Q&A. And how you can let me know if the progress on that.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, so to access the Q&A on your bottom of your screen, there should be just a little box with a question mark and a Q&A, and you can feel free to use that to input your answers.
Yeah, I see better return on our property. Great answer. Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'll keep going. But yeah, that's a great answer. Of course, that's probably the number one answer. So I'll kind of go to
Yeah.
what the main ones are here. So you're exactly right. Like kind of the nuts and bolts of it really is additional profit. That's kind of the number one motivator for most people. Besides that, some of the other ones are, there's options out there now besides just simply selling your property, right? Maybe you have multi-generational living where you might have a family member that might want to live on that same property, but not in the same house necessarily. So there's options there that you can do sort of multi-generational living. A lot of people as well, the third one, they're stay in the neighborhood. Um, that's a big one because there's a lot of people now too that they don't need such a massive house, especially if their kids have grown up and moved away. They don't need this massive house, but yet where else can they go? If they want to stay in their neighborhood, there's not really many options. A lot of these neighborhoods don't even have condos or townhouses or anything like that. So by doing multiplexes, it just gives another option for people to stay in that neighborhood as well. And then there's lots of other reasons as well. Everyone has their own kind of motivations for doing something like this, and that's what we'll kind of explore as we go through the slides today, and then we'll talk about more options at the end. Okay, so the next question is what's in it for realtors and brokerages? Because this presentation is also geared not just for homeowners, but also for realtors and brokerages as well. And we did a presentation already at one of the brokerages. We got some good feedback from that. The first thing here is the knowledge and professionalism, which kind of in this market where a lot of realtors are struggling with the sales that are down. Anytime that there's an opportunity for a realtor to get more knowledge on a new area or more professionalism on something like this that's still relatively new, we just think that it's a better benefit for all these realtors out there that can now have that knowledge versus other realtors that don't have that knowledge. That then kind of goes into the second point, which is adding services to your clients. So if you do have that extra knowledge and you're kind of on the forefront of this, and clients see that you're kind of an expert now in this area, that's something extra that you can add as a service to your clients versus not. And then thirdly, I guess both those two things combined is what's the end goal for the realtors too, is to increase sales. So again, by partnering with us potentially, but at least learning these stages, you can increase your sales, which again, we'll get into a case study at the end about that. Okay, so we'll do some intros. So I'll go first, and then I'll pass it off to Mark and Kathy and Hong. So I'm Trent Prasky. So I've been in real estate for 20 plus years. I've done a lot of investing, developing, kind of different sectors, everything from, buying apartment buildings to condo conversions to land, industrial, kind of you name it. What I specialize now, and especially the last kind of 5 or 6 years, has been this particular asset class. So dealing with multiplexes on kind of infill lots. So normally I would buy a lot, a house that's usually at its end. It's got to be torn down anyways. Um, and we usually put, several units on those lots. So 4 units is kind of the standard, but I'm doing a project now where I'm doing 11 units on 2 lots. So that's kind of my background and what I bring to the table. I'm also a realtor too, so I kind of can speak to the realtor side of things. So can I pass it off to Mark if you want to do an intro?
Yeah, thanks, Trent. Good evening, everyone. Mark Van Eck here with Venture Pacific. Been in the construction world all my adult life, so about 40 years, and most of that time in complex commercial projects throughout Western Canada. Been a project manager my entire career and a professional project manager designation as well. I got into the residential world about 10 years ago and have really wanted to gravitate towards developing the potential in projects and in properties, and the multiplex avenue has really intrigued me for about 3 or 4 years now, and happy to be part of this team on the construction side and the project management side and putting it all together, all the nuts and bolts as we get the construction going.
Okay, Kathy, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Kathy Yuan. I'm the founder of Phase One Design. Phase One Design is at heart an architectural design firm. We started in custom residential homes. So if you go on our website, phase1design.ca, you will see a lot of really fancy single family homes. However, that being said, because we do operate across Canada, we have 2 offices, one in Vancouver, one in Calgary. We have had to follow, we're going to talk about this today, but there is a major shift in development and the housing industry in general. So a huge shift towards multifamily. So we are now bringing to the market our knowledge of super high-end custom, but bringing it to the practicality of these types of developments, where in order to realize the largest ROI on your investment, I really believe that design can be a competitive strategy. So I'm very honored to be part of this team. Thank you for bringing me on. And our specialty coming into this is more on the pre-construction side. So we're bringing our 19 years of experience, and also my personal build background that I have before I started Phase One. I'm actually really old. So I've been doing this forever, like 19 years, more than 19 years. Yeah, so that's my background and my knowledge that I'm bringing to the team. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that today and sharing my knowledge with everyone here on our call today.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. And last but not least, Hong.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Hong Liu, pronounced like Hong Kong. I am a full-time real estate investor, and I'm a retired engineer and a PMP certified. What I bring to the table is the underwriting, the analysis of making sure that on the back end, all of the numbers make sense for our team and also for you as the partners potentially coming in, or the interested parties in looking at venturing down this path of doing multifamily. My background is 25 plus years in real estate. I've got over 100 doors across Canada and about $1 million in private lending. My skill set, my superpower is taking numbers and underwriting it and being very creative with the financing to make sure that whatever projects we work on is very profitable for everybody.
Okay, thanks, Hong. So before I move on to the next slide, you can kind of just see, having the 4 of us just kind of present ourselves, I guess the experience that we bring to the table. And I just tell people as well that I think we have kind of the most experienced team in the whole province for something like this. So, it just goes to show all our various backgrounds, how we can all combine together to, to create a cohesive group here. So, okay, so let's continue on.
Did you want to do the poll here?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so I will launch the poll. So on your screen, you should see 4 questions that come up. And if you can just take the time to answer it, that would be fantastic. Okay. Put 30 seconds on the clock. So this will just allow us to be able to tailor the content to you and make it a lot more relevant for those of you who are on the webinar with us tonight. Okay, so I see there are a few homeowners on here. There's a big resounding no for non-real estate agents. And it's a bit of a mix of how many people are really familiar with the small scale multifamily. And we've got a few people who are not familiar at all. So that's really interesting to find out.
This is incredibly helpful.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll leave the poll on up for another 2 seconds. All right. All right. Thank you to those of you who participated in the poll. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you so much for that, because this actually feeds really well into the next slide. So really at the end of the day, what the opportunity is, yeah, thank you again for the poll, because I will just kind of maybe like do a little bit more explanation here. So what ended up happening in BC, I'm going to just talk about BC specifically because that's where we all are. The province launched something called Bill 44. So what it was is it was more or less kind of like in layman's terms like blanket rezoning. So basically what they said is every single lot now in the province of BC, instead of being able to just build one single home, regardless of the zoning, you can build up to 4 units at a minimum on a single family lot. And obviously, that did create a lot of controversy and mixed feelings. But really, if we were just to look at this very objectively, what that really means is it creates this huge opportunity, to densify and like create more housing. That was the motivator behind Bill 44. So it affects every single community and every single city in BC. So if for those of you who, I'm sure you've heard like little snippets in the news and the media about, oh, wow, like there's these multiplexes going up. SSMUH is small scale multi-unit housing. So it's kind of like a fancy word for saying, let's say fourplex or, a multi-unit housing that you would actually do on a smaller scale on a single family lot. So think if you currently own a house or live in a single family home, that lot that you live on, you can at least do 4 units. In some cases, depending on where you are, you can do up to 6 units or even 8 units. And every property is a little bit different. We're not going to get into that quite today. But the moral of the story is like you can actually now do a lot more units than you previously were able to, because previously it was a very long process to rezone your single family property to do that amount of units. The other thing to know is that 4 is kind of the magic number. So the reason why it's called small scale multi-unit housing is it's not intended for the developer that wants to come in and build like an apartment building or like a high rise. Like that is not, there are rules in place that does not allow for that. So hence where, this is great that there's a bunch of homeowners attending this webinar today, because what that allows homeowners to do is the amount of capital that is required to actually do a project like this in equity is a lot lower than, if you were to obviously build a high rise. So, and we're going to deep dive into numbers today. So, as a recap, lots that are smaller than 280 square meters are allowed 1 to 3 units. And then it depends on your lot size, how many units they are. And in that poll that you took, that feasibility study, that is intended for all participants today. We are offering a complimentary site feasibility study for all the attendees of today's webinar. And the reason why we're doing that is because in today's webinar, we're going to talk very generally. You're going to learn a lot, but ultimately the zoning is going to come down to your project is going to come down to your specific site. So we're going to be able to run the zoning for you to say, okay, this is what you can actually build, and then also the numbers, which we'll dive into that. The opportunity to do more than 4 units too also exists. That typically exists with lots that are within 400 meters of a bus stop that provides what the municipality considers a frequent transit service. So for those of you who are looking for a lot or perhaps have not acquired a lot yet, we highly encourage you to engage an expert, like i.e. this team, to be able to help acquire that lot and just to make sure you're being very strategic in how you're finding that lot and making sure that that lot is you understand what you can actually build on that. Next slide, Trent, please.
Okay.
So in the Vancouver metro area, just to kind of paint a picture of the size of this opportunity, there's approximately 288,000 lots that this affected. So just to kind of put that into perspective, prior to Bill 44, those 288,000 eligible lots, you could do more or less like a single family, potentially with a suite in it. Now, again, you can actually now do four, a minimum four, in some cases six. So that single family land that now is now multiplex land. So it is a significant number. I will also just say we've had a lot of conversations internally about this as well. It doesn't actually surprise me that there's not a lot of knowledge out there about this typology of building because it is literally a moving target. Like I will say, being in the middle of this with permits and things like that, even the municipalities are trying to figure it out. So it is very complex. So it's very important for anyone embarking on a project like this to make sure they're aligning with experts that understand like the zoning part of it to make sure you're getting the right information.
Kathy, can I just to interject, can you say a little bit about Burnaby and Coquitlam as well? That things are moving in the other direction, these other municipalities as well, but this is just a sampling in the Metro Vancouver area.
100%. Yeah, that's a really good point, Mark. So today, just in the interest of we need to pick a municipality to focus on, we're going to talk more specifically about the city of Vancouver proper. But I will say there's a ton of activity in all of Metro Vancouver. Specifically, we're seeing a lot of activity in Vancouver, Burnaby, Coquitlam, like Mark mentioned. But it is affecting literally every single municipality across BC, regardless of where your lot is. Yeah.
Okay. I could take this one, Kathy. So looking at that opportunity again, this is kind of just an overview of what Kathy was talking about. So what I did here is I took the kind of the value of all these lots, these 288,000 lots that we just talked about, took the average price of these single family lots. That value came out to about 330 billion. So when you look at the opportunity of what if you could build, let's say, 4 units on all of these lots. So the opportunity shows that if that was even possible, the orange bar there, it goes up to, that's 1.29 trillion actually is what that is. So just not that that's ever going to happen, but just to show that there is such a massive opportunity that's happening currently. And yeah, it's just good now to start educating people on this and kind of asking people where they see themselves fitting and how we can, help them to achieve those goals. Okay, so how it works. So, we try to simplify this as much as possible because really we don't want to complicate it, and it is quite simple if you kind of break it down like this. So number one, it's simply this: like we have a chat together. Kathy mentioned the QR code at the end that we'll have that we can do a feasibility study. That's kind of the first step to talk about your individual lot to see, what can be built on that lot. We'll look at everything from all the dimensions, we'll look at the slopes of it, any certain parking requirements or anything like that. That's kind of step one and two. So that was kind of the due diligence in there as well. If things kind of go well and we answer all your questions and you're kind of on board at that point, we do sign a contract with the homeowner. So we'll get into this a bit more in a second, but there will be a contract signed that we become partners basically in the project. And then at that point, step number 4 would be the construction and the project management. And then finally, at the end, of course, we sell the units. We will get into some conversations later too about, people moving back in possibly. Some of them want to maybe keep a unit or two. Some people may want to, own one and give it to their children or something like that. So there's a lot of options on the sales side too, but we'll get into that later. I'll hand this off to Hong, who will talk a little bit more about the actual structure of that partnership.
So this is a very high level structure of what the partnership would look like. So Venture Pacific Developments would be the GP, the general partner, the working partners on this. And then you as the homeowner potentially would come in as the money investors or the LP. We would partner and form a limited partnership. And then this is where the owner, the home owning would fall under. And then we would build out the small scale multifamily under the limited partnership. In this example here, we've got multiple properties, just showing how this could be structured if you had more than one property, if you were interested in doing something like this. Okay. Trent, can you go to the next slide? Thank you.
Yep.
So we would form a GPLP, which is an industry standard on the type of partnership that we would form. The land is transferred over to the new company, the new partnership. And in this scenario, you as the homeowner wouldn't be paying for any land transfer tax on that transfer. And you would still retain part of the ownership through the partnership. Okay. In terms of the construction financing, so this is the money that's needed to build the multifamily. So we as Venture Pacific Developments would be responsible for getting the construction loan, the mortgage if needed, raising any of the capital. So we would be responsible for all of the financing portion on that. Trent, next slide. Thank you.
Okay.
So if you are interested in participating as a homeowner coming in and partnering up with Venture Pacific Developments, we would set up a partnership where there would be a profit split and it would be determined per property basis. Okay. And like Trent was saying, you do have the option to retain one or more of the units depending on your specific situation, as everybody's situation is slightly different here. So the homeowner participation, what that really equates to is you have equity in your current property, and that is what you're going to be contributing financially towards the project. Okay. And we can talk more about what that means if there's any questions around that. At this point, I'm just trying to make sure that you have an understanding of what that participation would look like. Trent, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So in the partnership structure, there's two main portions: the general partner, the GP, which is Venture Pacific Developments, and then the limited partner usually is the homeowner coming in with the home that they would like to redevelop, and or capital investors. This would be individuals who have money, not necessarily the land, but they have money and they want to come in as part of the LP and make a return on the project when it's finished. So on this slide, you'll see some of the different sort of roles and responsibilities. It's really to, be very transparent about where some of the risks are, some of the considerations, if you are interested in exploring coming into a project partnership like this. The biggest one that I would, really point out here is, as a homeowner coming in with equity and or capital, you're really a passive investor coming in, meaning that, you don't need to worry about the daily operations. You don't need to worry about making any of the decisions and so forth like that. That's all taken care of by Venture Pacific Developments. So the great thing about coming in this partnership is that, you're very passive. You can carry on with your daily life as it is. And then when the project is done, you'll receive a nice, healthy check from the profit split. Trent, next slide. This is just showing some of the risks that are in this type of partnership investment opportunity. like every investment out there, there is some level of risk. And I'm a big believer that if you know what the risks are, then we can at least prepare for it, mitigate it, and put in the necessary steps to have that conversation before it even happens. And so if it eventually, does happen, then at least we know how we're going to handle it. Okay. And so this is just at a very high level of some of the potential risks with a GP-LP partnership structure, with building small scale family. Okay. So these are just the very high level key points for you to take away. As the homeowner coming in or a money investor partner coming in, your role is very passive, meaning that you don't have to worry about any decisions, any of the headaches, any of that stuff. Your main contribution will be the land value, the property, or cash coming in. And then there is a profit split at the end, which we would determine all of that upfront, so that you would know going in what that profit split would be and what the potentials are, from the project. Okay. And all of this is done with lawyers. And so you would know, you would have that legal protection and know all of the ins and outs of the partnership. Okay. So there's that legal protection as well. Okay. Thanks, Trent.
Okay, thanks, Hong. And we'll pass this one on to Mark, more on the construction side.
Yeah, thanks, Trent. So you saw a few slides ago, there was a slide about a process, and Trent had talked about the due diligence and the contract execution. That's usually right at the it is at the very beginning, but it's before the project really gets into the first month. You see on the slide there that we do all the due diligence and the contract execution before we really start the design process. Design and permitting drawings are typically in the 3-month range, so you can see that on the slide. And then the permitting process with the City of Vancouver right now is about 4 months. Every municipality is going to be slightly different there. And then construction, we're estimating roughly 12 months for construction. And then there's a bit of overlap on the sale of the units. We would like to pre-sell the units before construction is completed. So we've given ourselves lots of time to sell the units, and then a little bit of buffer at the end. So the entire duration from once the contract is executed to completion is roughly 2 years.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mark. So I'll take over a little bit to talk about some of the financial scenarios here. So this project actually was a client that we're working with currently. So we did some numbers for them. So I'll kind of go through two scenarios here. Number one is in the gray box is simply, you have your home, you want it sold, and that's it. You don't want to do anything with development. And there's, of course, a lot of people out there like that. They maybe are moving out of town or whatever, and they have no really desire for building anything on their lot. The second scenario, number two, would be, what if we did partner with you and we built a multiplex on that lot? And it's just going to show a little bit more on what are the kind of the financial gains for that homeowner. Before I get into those scenarios, I'm just going to go to the bottom and look at these assumptions, because everyone's different. As Hong mentioned, everyone has a different, property. Even the lot size a lot of times is different. Everyone has different desires. Everyone has different equity amounts that they can put in. So we base this just on some very simple assumptions, just for this sake. So number one, I'll just go through these really quick. What's the home worth? So one of the assumptions we're just going to make here is that we're going to use fair market value. So we're either going to probably most likely get an appraisal on it just to keep it fair. Number two is we're assuming in this situation that there's no mortgage, because again, everyone may have a different mortgage amount. Some people may have no mortgage on it. But for assumption's sake, we're just using no mortgage on this one. In terms of the realtor side of things, that's just the commission split we're using is 7 and 2.5, which again could vary. The realtor split is 50-50. This particular example, just so people know where the numbers are based in terms of location, this one was West 11th. So Kitsilano area, which is we'll show you in a bit the reason why we're using the numbers that we're using, especially on the sales side. One key benefit for the sellers, the next item there was the sellers, they don't pay that initial commission in scenario 2. So if the seller is simply selling their home on MLS, obviously they're going to pay a realtor to sell that home. There's a commission involved. If they sell it to us as a partnership, there wouldn't be a commission. So there is some savings on that for the homeowner. Last one on this row here is the profit split. So 70-30. That will vary depending on the project, but in this scenario, we're going to use a 70% split of the profits to the homeowner, which is quite attractive. And over on the right-hand side, we're saying that typical splits are between that 50 and 70% range. So it depends again on the complexity of the deal. Yeah, a lot of variables involved on that. And then kind of the last point there's options that exist for the realtor to make additional commissions on the sale of the home to the GP. So yeah, the realtor can actually benefit in several ways. If they don't just sell that single family home, they can also sell the 4 units at the end, which I'll get into right now. So scenario 1, this is the sample that we used, the client that we were working with. So this is our case study. So their appraised, no, it wasn't the appraised value on that one. That was the assessed value that we used for them. But the assessed value there, we're assuming it was 2.8 roughly. If that was sold on MLS, the sales commission would be roughly almost 75,000, so 74,642. In that case, then the homeowner just simply sells it, they pay their commissions, and they would profit 2.73, assuming there was no mortgage. Again, this is why we kind of have to assume that, because just for ease of reference. So they would, on the bottom, the realtor commission at that point would be 37,000. So if we look at scenario 2 in the blue box, let's say the homeowner does partner with us. Again, as Hong mentioned, we would take care of absolutely everything in terms of the development side of things and the sales. In this case, if we did build those 4 units, the sale price would be 8.2 million. The sales commissions would be 209,000. And then the homeowner profit would be 3.9 million. And that, in brackets underneath, I have sale to GP plus 70% profit split. So that 3.9, that would be that homeowner getting their initial value of the sale, plus it would be that 70% profit of the project that goes back to them. So they would then profit 3.9 million. And then the box below that, the homeowner additional gain. So versus scenario 1, if they did partner and we built out a 4-plex in this scenario, the additional gain to the homeowner would be roughly 1.2 million. And then that would equate to an ROI, return on investment, of about 45%. So again, there's a lot of assumptions here. This is just one example, but at least it gives kind of a general idea of what is that profit potential. So people can kind of see, I've thought about this. I don't know anything about it. I want to know, first off, what is the profit potential? Because that was one of the number one things at the very beginning that people want to know is it worth it really? Is it worth going through a process like this? So again, that's one example of a project that we've actually worked on so far. And then from the realtor side, I'll just kind of mention the realtor gains as well. So in this scenario here, scenario 2, the realtor commission would be 104,000. And then the additional gain to the realtor would be 67,000, which would mean an additional gain of about 81%. Okay, and again, we'll have more time for questions later, or one-on-one questions as well if we can't answer those today. Okay, we'll continue on. So this was the West
other
11.
thing to keep in mind, Trent, too, is that as part of our responsibility is that we would present a pro forma to all of the attendees. And so it would be, property by property basis. But when we put the pro forma together, it would be based on your specific property. And so you'll have a better idea of what all of the costs will be roughly within a range. And then, one of the things that Trent would be doing is pulling up market stats showing what we could resell for and what we think the cost would be. And so then we would be able to pretty much hand deliver a pro forma to you that would give you a realistic range of what what the cost would be, what the anticipated returns would be. Right.
Yeah.
So that would come with that feasibility study if that's what you wanted as well.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Tom. So I'll just kind of briefly go through this one. There's a lot of numbers on here. So the previous slide, those numbers that we chatted about there, this is more kind of an in-depth look at this property. As I mentioned, it was on West 11th. These are just the numbers that, again, we use to get those answers from the last slide. So I don't think I'll go through them all, but you can see the land and closing, hard costs, soft costs, financing costs. At the bottom of that first column is the cost per home, which we'll talk about later in terms of our break even. That middle column is the revenue. So in this particular case, the homeowner wanted to do 4 units. They had an interesting situation because they wanted to retain one of them and live in it after the project was built. So that's why unit 1, you can see, is showing 2,500 square feet. That was the one that they kind of wanted to be their own home. Units 2, 3, and 4, they wanted to split those up, either, again, have them as rentals or give one to their child, whatever the situation is. So that's why those ones are a little smaller in size. The per square foot numbers. So as a realtor, I did crunch numbers on this particular area of Vancouver. And these numbers of 1,400 a square foot are what the comps were showing me. So yeah, we believe that these projects in certain areas are going to fetch that price. There actually is one, funny enough, I just looked at again today, that's listed at, actually it's only a few blocks from there, listed at $1,700, just over $1,700 a square foot, listed. So, it hasn't sold at that yet, but just to show that, using 1,400 is viable, and that's what the comps are telling us. And then looking at the profitability side, so the net revenue came out to 7.8. The total cost, 6.1, almost 6.2. The profit would be 1.6 million. And then the return on cost is basically just a metric that the lenders want to see, is 26% return on cost. Usually they won't, necessarily look at these unless it's at least 15, even 20% return on cost. So this is a viable project in the bank size. And then last but not least, the market sensitivity. So this is crucial. Hong talked about risk. So we always want to look at what is the risk, if anything should happen to the market, especially. In this situation here, again, the price per unit, if we did break even on this, let's call it a break even scenario, we would have to sell these at 1.547 to break even. That number, then if you look at the PSF, which is per square foot cost, would be just over $1,000 a square foot. So saying that our target price was $1,400 a square foot, if the market dropped so bad that we could only sell it at $1,056 a square foot, we would still break even. And I'll go to the next slide, because the next slide it's a good one because it kind of tells a story of, how bad the market has fallen historically and where this drop would fit in if this did happen. At the bottom of this one, you could see that it says the break-even price per square foot represents a drop in price of 24.5% from our target. So our target was the 1,400, which is what the comps are saying. The break-even would be just over 1,000, so 1,056. So that represents a 24% drop. So even if the market dropped 24%, we would still break even. And this is the slide that I was referring to. It's a little complicated, but the 3 circles in green are kind of the key points there. So the one on further to your left, 16.6% drop. This would have been about year 2009, the financial crisis. So the market had a big drop, as we all know. That amounted to, from the high to the low, there was 16.6% exactly. The other big historical one in the last several years was, of course, the pandemic. And ironically, actually, when I first saw this, I'm like, it's crazy that it's also 6.6% drop from the high to the low, as you can see by those the green bars across. So when we look again at 2 of the massive disruptions in the market over the past kind of generation or so, both were at 16.6%. In the scenario that we just showed you, it was a 24% drop. That would still break us even. So I like to show that because, of course, there are risks, but we're trying to mitigate these risks as much as possible and try to really analyze what could possibly happen. And if it did, like one of these 2 drops, we should still be okay in terms of at least breaking even. I'll pass this back to Hong. You know a little bit more about the financial and revenue side here.
Yeah. So this slide is just saying that if you were to put your money and invest it in somewhere else, what is the potential return that you would be making? And so a lot of us are very familiar with the GIC, which is the 3rd item down. And if you were to put your money into a GIC for like a 1 year, 2 year time frame, you'd see anywhere from around 2.6 to maybe 4% now. Okay. And if you were to put your money into the S&P 500 over a 10-year period, you'd be making about 14.5%. Okay. So we're showing this in comparison to potentially doing a partnership with Venture Pacific Developments and doing one of these small scale multi units, because the returns on this is anywhere from 20 to 40%. So significantly higher than what you would see with your funds if you were to just sell your property and take the funds and invest it into the S&P 500 or the GIC, right? It's just another way to make your money work a lot more faster and more powerful than going with the traditional route.
Okay, thanks, Hong. We'll talk a little bit more on the design side of things, so we'll get Kathy back in to talk about that.
All right, hello again, everyone. So everybody wants to know, okay, like the numbers are obviously very important, but I think the other question we always get asked is, what does it kind of sort of look like? So the answer to that question is, it depends on your lot. So I'm going to show you some, I call them shiny renderings in the next slide, but I want to start off with just talking about kind of like the two typical lot sizes. Again, we had to pick one municipality. So for the purposes of tonight, we're going to talk specifically City of Vancouver. So we're showing two case studies. So the first one is on a typical 33-foot lot, and the second one I'll talk about is a 50-foot lot. So on a typical 33-foot lot, your site is 4,026 square feet to be exact, if it's a 33 by 120. So on this type of lot, you will be able to get 4 units. So I'm not going to deep dive into City of Vancouver bylaw because it is very complicated and it will put everybody to sleep. But if you look at like bullet points number 3, 4, and 5, it kind of shows you an overview of what you kind of end up with square footage wise. So the important thing to know is a few key numbers, which I'll point out. So the first one is your minimum square footage will be 4,026 square feet, and your maximum will be roughly in around the 5,193 square feet. Most people like to always ask, okay, well, do you have to divide that equally or not? The answer is no, you do not need to do that. You can see on the upper left-hand image there, that is an example of how you could actually set up your site in one building. Typically, in the world of construction, you always want to build everything in one building versus 2 buildings. It is just a lot more efficient construction cost-wise. So again, because we want to maximize our ROI, typically we always recommend one building, depending on the lot, but one building. And as you can see, typically on a 33-foot lot, you're going to have your parking from the rear lane. So that is another requirement for everybody to know. That has a lot in Vancouver. You do actually require a yes, you require a rear lane in order to be eligible for multiplex. And if you don't have a rear lane, unfortunately, your lot does not qualify. So just one indicator right out of the gate to look for. In order to get from 4,026 square feet to the 5,193 square feet, the reason why there's such a huge variance there is because there's a lot of what we call bonus density. So I'm not going to get into like the super technical details, but there are certain design things that if you design the building in a certain way, you can actually jump up your square footage up that high. So from 4,026 square feet to 5,193 square feet. So for example, your mechanical rooms are excluded in that count, so you get more square footage. If you design your staircases a certain way, they will be excluded. And then your upper floor, if it's designed within a certain way as well, that will also be excluded. So again, it kind of just emphasizes, again, making sure you're working with the right person because, at what did you say, Trent? That $1,700 a square foot, well, presumably resale, even $1,400 a square foot resale. For every square foot that you're not getting, you're giving that up. So we always want to maximize the square footage. So that just kind of paints a picture of the rough square footage that you can get on a typical 33-foot lot. Case study number 2 talks about a 50-foot lot. On a 50-foot lot, you could do up to 6 units. You may hear a rumor that you can do 8 units, and that is true, but not true. So yes, on paper, yes, you can do up to 8 units. The only caveat to that, which is usually the big deal breaker for most people, is that you actually need to, in the city of Vancouver specifically, to get to 8 units, and you actually need to hold them as rentals into perpetuity, which obviously this whole model does not work. This whole model is based on the premise that you are taking the units at the end and reselling them to actually get your ROI. So that's why I'm saying it's 6 and not 8. So, and sorry, I missed something important. The term FSR, you will actually hear that term quite frequently, for everybody here tonight. FSR stands for floor space ratio. So, floor space ratio, where it says typical floor space ratio is 1.0. Basically, what that means is if your lot is, on a 50-foot lot, if your lot is 6,100 square feet, then that basically means if your floor space ratio is 1.0, that means the floor space or your square footage that you can actually build is actually you multiply it by the 1.0. So obviously you want that 1.0 as high as possible, and you can actually, if you do it properly, you can actually get that number up to 1.29 in Vancouver. So that's almost a 30% increase if you know what you're doing. Yeah, so opportunity for additional 0.29, or with a 50-foot lot, that's an additional 1,769 square feet times whatever that resale dollar per square foot number is. So your total available on a 50-foot lot is 7,869 square feet. In this particular graphic example that you see, we do see, 2 buildings. So again, even though I did say, yes, your construction costs are a lot more streamlined with one building, it's not just as simple as all about the construction cost. You also want to look at the quality of the design on the resale side to say, okay, well, what is going to sell for the highest resale? So in this case, you can see we did not design this building, by the way. These are images from the city of Vancouver, so that's why they're not very attractive. Sorry, sorry, Vancouver. But you'll see that there is intended to be a courtyard between the front building and the back building, which is essentially an amenity space. So there's things like that. It's all I'm saying is it's more simple than, you want to. There's so many different factors you want to consider in the design. Yeah. And then next slide, please, Trent. And then these are the shiny photos as promised. So these are lots and lots of different examples of multiplexes. As you can see, it really depends on the lot. There's so many different ways that a multiplex can look. So some of them, we always try to mimic a single family or like a lower density, because I think everyone's dream is like, oh wow, I live in a single family home. Even though if you live in a multiplex, like the dream is always, and I just know this based on talking to literally like thousands of custom clients over the years, everybody just wants that dream, right? Like that's everyone's dream to have their own home like that. So you can see a lot of these designs mimic the single family. The one that you see on the left-hand side, upper left-hand side, that is actually one that we just finished designing in Burnaby. It's on a 50-foot lot, and it is indeed a fourplex, and it was very intentionally designed to look like a single family home. So even the second door, I challenge you to find it. We just wanted to make sure that it looked very much like a single family. So yeah, just things like that. I think really, as I said earlier, design can be a huge competitive advantage, not just, the aesthetics of it, but even the functionality. That's really what's gonna take that cost or the resale price per square foot and really, really increase that as much as possible.
So if anybody can find that second door that Kathy put a challenge to, I will hand deliver one of my special books to whoever
Oh,
can find it.
everyone's gonna zoom in now.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. Okay, so we'll kind of wrap it up now. So the question is why now? I think we have 1 or 2 slides left, and we'll have a bit of time for questions. So things that we talked about throughout the presentation tonight is again more revenue potential for the homeowner and the realtor. This one's particularly for realtors if they are struggling with some of the commissions, especially in a down market like this. A lot of times it is nice to know that you have future revenue. If you know that in a year or two from now, you're going to have 4 units potentially to sell, it's just kind of nice to have that peace of mind. The other one there's number 3 is capturing the new opportunity before it's oversaturated. I mean, this is still new. There's really hardly any of these on the market right now, but they will be coming. So now is the time to kind of get involved in this. And then thirdly, again, back to the homeowner, just something different than just simply selling your home. So now there's options out there to be a part of this in terms of a financial partner, But also if you want to move back to that neighborhood again, or even have your children, taking a unit and living with you in that same lot. And then why us? As I mentioned before, I strongly believe that we are the most qualified team in the whole province to do this with all the experience that we have collectively. You could kind of see from our backgrounds that we do have that experience to move this forward. So kind of just to leave it, there's a QR code there. If you do have an address that you do want that feasibility study on, let us know. If you click the log into, sorry, if you look at the QR code, you'll get an option to put your address in, and we'll contact you to kind of move things forward with you, and you'll have more chance to ask more specific questions, and then even set a one-on-one. We can book a one-on-one call with you as well.
Yeah,
And
Trent,
then,
just to add to that, the QR
yeah,
code there are two options. You can actually book a consultation, the one-on-one, as well as fill in the form and get more information as well. So
okay.
it kind of does both.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Yeah. So this is it, really the next steps. As Mark just mentioned, there's two options there. So um, I think we can open it up for some questions. We have about 10 minutes, I guess, or so.
Yeah. And so the way to ask a question is, if you want, you could type your question into the Q&A, or if you raise your hand by clicking on the participant and then the reaction, there's a hand raising. And if you want to raise your hand, then I can unmute you and you can verbally ask your question that way as well. Okay, so a question came through privately. So the question is, okay, the question is about the timeline. Can you guys talk a little bit more about it looked like it was a 24-month timeline.
I can go back to that slide.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, don't really start the clock ticking until we actually have finalized the contract. So we're doing our feasibility study, our due diligence, we're crunching the numbers. Everything is looking good. We're going to go into contract execution. So we don't really start the 24-month clocks ticking until the contract is executed, and then we get started on the design and permit drawing stage. That's going to vary as well with the complexity, but we put in about 3 months there. Once the permit application is in with the municipality, it's a waiting game. We're waiting for the municipality to complete that permit process. As I mentioned, it varies from municipality to municipality. Vancouver right now, I believe, on a multiplex is in the 3 to 4 month range, probably closer to 4 months. Construction, we're giving it about 12, maybe 13, 14 months max, but we're fairly comfortable at 12 months. And then, as I said, we're selling the units before construction is completed through digital imagery, digital marketing, and then hoping to sell them before completion or shortly thereafter. So if you look at the slide, that timeline from contract execution to completion is roughly 2 years.
All right, so let me know if that doesn't answer your question in there. Okay, so another question came through. What are my landlord responsibilities under the BC Residency Tenancy Act?
I could probably take that one, only from some recent experience. I do know a recent project that I'm currently working on. I had to give the tenants 4 months notice, but that was triggered at the time of, I believe it was building permit. So once you get building permit, don't quote me, this may have changed, but in my situation is once I got building permit, I had to give them the 4 months notice. And in terms of any kind of rent in lieu, I believe it was 1 month of rent that I had to provide as well. And if you do want to do obviously anything extra, like pay for their moving or whatever on top of that is fine. But and preface that too by saying that that was in the city of Victoria as well. But I think it's a provincial mandate anyway, so it's probably the same.
Okay. Yeah. I think the other part that I would throw in there as well to add to that is that as we're doing our due diligence process, we would work with you to make sure that if you have tenants in there, that all of the paperwork and all of the requirements to help that tenant relocate would be taken care of as well, right? In terms of just making the logistics work on that. All right. All right. Thank you, Jessica, for those questions and comments. Okay, so feel free, if you have any other questions, please feel free to put them into the Q&A.
Or book a one-on-one, and we can do it in person as well.
Okay. Oh, this is an interesting one. Kathy, I think this one will be for you, maybe. How will these types of projects affect neighborhoods, noise, parking, shadowing, and privacy?
That is a great question. And I don't know if I am the girl to answer that question because it's such a big question. So it's a question that a lot of communities are asking, not just in Vancouver, but I will say, like I mentioned, we have a Vancouver office as well as a Calgary, Alberta office. And that's like literally the question of the day that's being posed to everyone. Here's how I'm going to answer that question. I'll share what I believe the way to do this is. The way to do it is through intentional design. And what I mean by that is, you know, I think anytime an opportunity like this presents itself, you're going to get two types of people. You're going to get the people that come in and they don't really care about anything besides let's just make a quick buck and let's just throw up whatever we can in a low quality way, in the cheapest way. Let's make a buck and then just keep going on, you know, like and not really care about the community and the neighborhood. Unfortunately, we're going to see a lot of that. And that's going to happen no matter what. My belief, and because, you know, Vancouver, I feel like is like my second home. I was born and raised in Calgary, so that's my first home. But you know, it's I feel like these are communities that I have like roots in. So I have a very vested interest in making sure that every single project that we are part of and that I put my personal name on, they are of high quality. Yes, we are going to create more housing density, and that is going to result in more square footage. And actually, that's not even necessarily true. The square footage for these multifamilies are very similar to, or could be, or in some cases, are similar to what you could do on a single family. It's just the density is different. So I think just being very intentional about how you design that's going to create great communities. Things like noise and privacy and shadowing and overlooking, those are all things that a high quality design firm should always be looking at, not just for multifamily, but even for a single family home. Like that example of that home the multiplex that we just designed that looks like a single family home, that was done very intentionally, right? But what we could have done is just put up a square box with a bunch of windows in it and called it a multiplex. And you are going to find, unfortunately, developers that do that, but that's not what this group is about. And then, sorry, the last thing was parking, right? Parking, I think was
Privacy.
privacy. Oh, okay, not parking. Okay, so I think I addressed the privacy. Parking is something that is I will just address that because everybody asked about parking. Parking is super controversial. The municipalities, to be honest, I think my opinion is they're still trying to figure it out because when Bill 44 was mandated on a provincial level, all the municipalities were forced to comply. So they are all kind of scrambling to, you know, kind of catch up to that and figure out what that means. I just think it just comes back to intentional design and just working with a high quality team. Yeah, that everyone's proud to put their name on.
Good.
I don't know if I've answered that question.
So if that answer is not what you were looking for, please reach out to us and ask that during the one-on-one or during when we do the feasibility study. I don't know. I think you answered it quite well, Kathy. So
Okay. Great.
Okay.
That's
I'm
like a
not seeing
politician
any.
question. I'm an architectural technologist, so not a politician.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions coming through. So
Awesome.
yeah. Okay. All right,
Great.
Trent.
Okay, yeah.
Do you want to close us out?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think that's great. The timing's exactly right anyways. Yeah, I appreciate everyone coming on the call. I hope you did get some value out of this. I hope we did answer some questions as well. And we hope to chat with you guys further in terms of, how we can potentially partner with you or at least address some questions that you may have. So again, you have the QR code there, and yeah, we hope to see you again soon. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Thanks, everybody.